The on-again, off-again nature of the BYU men's basketball program is giving Cougar Nation a whole lot of whiplash and will ultimately be to their demise.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, 14-year credentialed media member at BYU, your resident expert and insiders, your host here on this show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you for making all of us folks over at Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Coming up on today's show, reaction to BYU's loss to UCF and where the Cougars go from here. Is it a one-game blip or is it more of the same from Kevin Young's squad? We'll get into that. Then we're going to talk about Kalani Sitake starting to get some national love as he is long deserved. We'll talk about where he's getting it from this time and why he ultimately deserves it. Then we'll finish up today's show with another one of our burning questions entering BYU football spring camp. And we're going to talk about the edges, pass rush, what guys are going to emerge this spring at those positions. We'll get into all that ahead on today's show, and it's all brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel has got an opportunity for you guys. If you want to go to the NBA Finals, use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, if you stayed up late last night to watch this one go down, you know exactly what happened as BYU trailed by as many as 36 points to the UCF Knights, ultimately falling 97-84. And don't let that final score fool you. It was nowhere near that margin in terms of that what I thought the disparity between these two teams was. Yes, I know that BYU made a run in the final, let's say, 10 minutes of this game, and they outscored UCF. I'm doing quick math in my head. So from about the 10-minute mark on, with 10:15 to go, UCF led 76-44. So it was a 32-point lead at that point. BYU from that point on outscored them 40-21. To me, that was empty calories in terms of that comeback effort. And yes, it was good to see guys like Tyler Maruss and Alexei Kostic have strong moments in this game. And in fact, BYU had one of their best bench performances of the season, 21 points off the bench from those two players. So it's still just two guys off the bench contributing to BYU's bottom line. But ultimately, you can't give up 56% shooting from the field, worse, 58% from three, and expect that you're going to compete in any meaningful fashion against a team like UCF. UCF looked the part of an NCAA tournament team who was peaking at the right time of the year, whereas if you contrast what BYU put on the court last night, you got to be mighty concerned that this could be a first-round exit for the BYU Cougars. Now, I will say this. We will learn a lot about BYU going out on the road. They go out on the road against West Virginia on Saturday. They followed up with a midweek game at Cincinnati before ultimately having senior night against Texas Tech a week from Saturday. There are 3 games remaining in the regular season for BYU, and we are going to learn a lot about what happened against Iowa State, which was absolutely the win of the year for the BYU Cougars, their first win over a Big Ten opponent, really the signature win of the season for the Cougars. If that was the real BYU, or if what happened against UCF is what the real BYU is all about. That's why I referenced the on-again, off-again nature of this BYU team. It was disheartening. At one point in this game, and UCF ended up with 25 total assists on 36 made buckets. That's an incredible assist to made field goal percentage. At one point in this game, the disparity of assists between these two teams was 22-2. BYU ultimately ended up with 11 assists on 29 made field goals, and that's kind of par for the course of this BYU team. They're just not a team that has high assist numbers because they play a lot of ISO ball, and that obviously leads to why AJ Dybantsa has 29 points in this game, 8 rebounds, 0 assists. Robert Wright III, though, 20 points, 7 assists. So he had 7 of the 11 assists. The other assists came from 2 from Tyler Maruss, 1 from Alexei Kostic, and the other one from Kennard Davis Jr. The issue I see with this BYU basketball team is they just don't work as a cohesive unit. And quite frankly, at this point, why can you not defend the three-point line? And it was a frankly pathetic effort at points with the lack of hustle, it felt like, trying to close out on guys on the perimeter. UCF is a high 3-point volume shooting team, and they were cooking. There's just zero doubt about that. And you tip your cap to UCF to a degree, but some of the wide open nature of those shots and the body language BYU players displayed after some of those shots went in, it's not a good look for Kevin Young and company. And I would have thought, and this is personal opinion on the matter, that going into halftime, Kevin Young would run into that locker room, show the tape as BYU is down big, and say, guys, where's the pride? Where is the heart? Well, you know what happened coming out of the first part of the second half? Oh, wait, a 10-0 run for UCF. I don't like coming on this podcast and ripping BYU. It's not, quote, good for business, unquote. But what else am I supposed to say about that performance from the BYU basketball program? And I'm telling you, I'm not buying stock in the late run by BYU. I felt like UCF relaxed. They knew they were up 32 points. They got as high as 36 points. They had this game in the bag, and there was an analytics thing put out by Jerem Jordan. He retweeted a guy that said, if you have a 32-point lead with 12 minutes and change to go in a college basketball game, you're essentially assured of winning that basketball game. It's like 99.9999% you're going to win that basketball game. ESPN's BPI, the basketball percentages index, I'm pretty sure the entire second half of that game, UCF had a 99.9% chance of winning this basketball game. It was not a good effort from the BYU basketball squad. And yes, it could be they just had an off night. Sure. But I think the body of work of this BYU basketball squad shows us that it goes up and down. It ebbs and flows with this team. When they're feeling right and the way that they played against Iowa State on Saturday night, yeah, they're capable of beating anybody. But the way they played against UCF, they're just as capable of losing to anybody, it feels like. And that's the concerning nature of this BYU basketball team at this point. Because let's say they have an off game the first round of the NCAA tournament. There's a reason why it's called win or go home. It's one and done. There is no bouncing back. You lose in March Madness, thanks for coming. Let's get you a plane ride back to Provo. That's the cruel nature of this sport as it comes to its ultimate finale. Is you go into the NCAA tournament and it feels like this BYU team is very much a boomer bust type team. And based on the performance against UCF, I think a lot of you, myself included, would be saying, okay, that's a team that's going to bust and they might be a first round exit. But like, once again, if you put the type of performance you put on against Iowa State, well, you're capable of beating literally anybody, it feels like, in that circumstance. The problem is you've only got one of the games against Iowa State, against a handful of others on the other side that say, this BYU team could struggle come tournament time. But there are 3 games remaining. We will learn, hopefully, I'm just, fingers crossed, who the real BYU is in those 3 games. They'll have at least one game in the Big 12 tournament. And let's just put it this way. BYU, with their body of work already with regards to their quad 1 games, quad 2 games, they're a lock to make the NCAA tournament field. It's all about seeding at this point for BYU. And then we'll ultimately see where the chips fall come March Madness. But it's a mighty, mighty concerning effort level for BYU coming out of this game against UCF. And they got a whole lot to work on. If they cannot defend the 3-point line, it could be a very, very quick one and done in the NCAA tournament. Coming up next, more positive news. Kalani Sitake, he is getting his laurels, and I'm dead serious. This is awesome to see. This is a guy who has led BYU on a pretty epic run of success the past 2 seasons in particular, and he's finally getting some national love from some people that I literally thought it would never come from. We'll get into that next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. If you ever want to if you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, well, FanDuel is giving you that opportunity to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. All you got to do, use your profit boost on any NBA future and be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience of the NBA Finals. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run in the NBA playoffs, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And not only can you pick cash, but it can also send you to experience the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Use that profit boost on FanDuel on an NBA future. It doesn't matter what it is. Take a flyer, you take a favorite, doesn't matter. You will get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Of course, you can play your game with FanDuel as they are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. Now, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. Literally. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork of having to do it yourself. Instead of trying to spend hours trying to figure out all the different forms, you get a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and everything in between, and work to get you every deduction. Upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app while it's going on. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling all of it for you. For a limited time, you can still have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, you got to file by February 28th. So you got to get on this quickly if you want to still take advantage of this. Take taxes off your plate and get your life back. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. If you have not joined the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club, what are you waiting for? If you want to get all access in terms of the ability to get extra content from yours truly, want access to our members-only Discord server, you want Locked On merch, no matter what is in it for you, there's a whole lot of perks available to you as a member of the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. All you got to do is go online to lockedoncougars.supercast.com. That's lockedoncougars.supercast.com and support the show by being a member of the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. All right. Joel Klatt is a pretty well-known national college football pundit. Obviously, he's on the lead team for Fox college football broadcast, working with Gus Johnson, and he does an incredible job at breaking down the game of college football. And he also has a very, very strong opinion on the sport that we all love, speaking of college football, and he's not afraid to share it. He does a podcast/show. It's kind of a hybrid that he does with Fox Sports. And he put out his top 10 coaches in college football this week is one of his topics on his show. And as I was watching it unfold, all of a sudden this graphic pops up. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to throw it up right now. So number one coach in college football, according to him, is Curt Cignetti. And who's going to argue with that? He took a program at one point, the losingest program in college football history in the Indiana Hoosiers, and in 2 years' time made them national champions. Yeah, I'd have a hard time saying that Curt Cignetti is not the best coach in college football right now. He's got Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, Marcus Freeman. Okay, that's a pretty easy top five for the top coaches in the country. The only person I would quibble with on that list is Marcus Freeman, because I know Marcus has led Notre Dame to a national title game, but he's got to, I think, have a longer track record, but same thing can be argued for Dan Lanning. Begin the second half of the top 10 here, and we get a run of BYU guys. Steve Sarkisian at Texas at number 6. Kyle Whittingham. Yes, I'm claiming Kyle Whittingham. He's part of the BYU tree. He played for the Cougars. Lavelle Edwards was one of his mentors. He's at number 7. And then checking in at number 8 on this list, the one, the only, Kalani Sitake. This is awesome to see, because Gus has been a guy that I feel like at times it's kind of like pulling teeth for him to give any plaudits or credit to the BYU football program. And it's nothing against him. I just think he has his opinion and he sticks by it, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. But I love the fact that Kalani Sitake, after putting together back-to-back double-digit win seasons, 23-4, I need to remind you guys, if you're everydayers, of the run BYU's had the past 2 years in the Big 12 Conference. It is awesome to see a guy like Kalani Sitake getting his credit, because just behind him, Mario Cristobal. Okay, Miami played a national title game this past year, and then Lane Kiffin is at number 10. These are like the who's who of college football coaches. These are the guys that you see featured on every single periodical, college football television program, podcast, whatever it is. When you talk about the who's who of college football, coaches in college football, they have an outsized persona and popularity that really doesn't even exist in the NFL. It's more about the players in the NFL than it is about the coaches. It's kind of flipped in some ways in college football. But it's awesome to see Kalani Sitake getting credit from guys like Joel Klatt, because it shows that Kalani, what he's doing with the BYU football program, it's not going unnoticed. And at times, it feels like it has gone unnoticed. And I know a bunch of you are probably arguing, well, it'd be nice if they could actually, get some credit when it comes to the college football playoff. Well, Joel Klatt doesn't sit on that committee. It's a committee of, 11 or 12 people that ultimately decide the playoff fate of the 12 teams that play for the national championship every single year. And BYU's right there knocking on the door. And if things go according to plan this year, I think the Cougars have every intention of seeing that door open and kicking it down, if at all possible. I want to see it happen. And if Kalani Sitake does break through, and let's say BYU does make the college football playoff, are you going to move him down this list? No, you're going to move him up that list. And Obviously, it will all depend on what type of run that the program makes, speaking of BYU. But I love the fact that Kalani is getting his flowers because he deserves it. This is a program, speaking of BYU, that has got a lot of inherent, I'm not saying weaknesses, but like things that would be a stumbling block for a lot of other coaches. Those include BYU still being a university that requires its athletes. You have to attend class. You have to stack up academically to attend the school in the first place. There's just zero question about that. And then also the ever-present honor code. That is a very stringent code of rules, and you run afoul of it, guess what? The consequences are what they are, and BYU will stand by those rules till kingdom come. And I respect it. I love the fact that the honor code is as stringent as it is because it does require these players that come and play for the BYU football program, they've got to live up to that code. Kalani Sitake doesn't shy away from telling recruits exactly what the honor code entails. And yes, there are going to be people who want to throw back in your face, well, they've had back-to-back seasons marred by sexual assault allegations. I get that. But I think that Kalani Sitake has got a track record of espousing what the ideals and the standards of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are. Obviously, that filters down to Brigham Young University and the standards that are contained in the honor code. He doesn't shy away from it. He talks about clean living. He talks about how it is actually a strength for his program to have the vast majority of his guys buying in and living the way that they live. This BYU team, they have been a walking example of what BYU football, I think all of us wanted it to be, and was showing what exactly it can be, especially in this day and age of college football. Yes, NIL has changed the game. The fact that BYU can offer players money to come and play for their university, but Kalani has said it himself. If you are coming to BYU just for a paycheck, this is not the place for you. That's a guy that he has said. He said it in his press conference when he got his new contract extension after the Penn State stuff. He said that those are the guys I want to play against because they're not bought in. They're there. They're mercenaries, for lack of a better term. They're there for a paycheck. They're there to collect money. It's got to mean more, and that's what it does mean for the BYU football program, and it's what it means for Kalani Sitake. He is very clear that he grew up a fan of this university. He was lucky enough to play for the legend Lavelle Edwards, the guy that he idolized. He was obviously mentored by Lavelle until Lavelle's passing in 2016. And obviously Patty Edwards, who just recently passed, continued that on over the ensuing 10 years. The nice part is Kalani is living his literal dream as a young man who sat outside at Cougar Stadium, and dreamed of playing on that field and then ultimately coaching there. He's living that dream, and I love the fact that Kalani, he's had the success he's had, but at the same time, he's starting to get some of that national pub that it feels like, and I'll just add this little tidbit. That national pub, it can go a long way to, I think, changing some mindsets, narratives, and other just things that work against BYU when it comes to the college football playoff and the like. So the more guys like Joel Klatt speak out in favor of BYU, in particular about Kalani Sitake, it's only going to help the BYU football program. All right, we'll finish up today's show on another note when it comes to BYU football. We've been talking about it all week long. Burning questions going into spring camp for the BYU Cougars. Well, today we're going to talk about the edges unit. What exactly do we need to see in spring camp from a very young contingent of talented football players, and who ultimately emerges at that spot? We'll talk about that next.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. South Carolina rolled past Ole Miss 85-48 to clinch a share of the SEC regular season title and lock down the number 1 seed in the conference tournament. The Gamecocks extended their win streak over Ole Miss to 21 straight. UCLA dominated Wisconsin 80-60 to secure its first outright Big Ten regular season championship in program history. The Bruins improved to 27-1 overall and remain unbeaten in conference play. And number 12 TCU stormed back from a 13-point fourth quarter deficit to beat Iowa State 80-73. The Horned Frogs now sit alone atop the Big 12 standings and are 1 win away from clinching another regular season conference crown. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, your inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs because they help you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, and a bevy of other features to help you find the right people, so you're not just hoping to find the right candidate and they stumble across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute we're talking about this, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing the candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. And when you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is the time for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves by going to Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by telling them that you heard about it here on Locked On Cougars. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And if you have not subscribed, rated, reviewed, shared the show with your family and friends, and frankly, just, crowed about the fact that we do a daily BYU show, well, please do so. Please like the show on YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcast if you're listening to the audio format, and once again, share it with your family and friends who may not know that this is the original daily BYU podcast, and appreciate all of your support in advance. All right, continuing on now with our burning questions ahead of BYU spring camp opening up on Friday. There is a position group that I think has got a bevy of talent in it, but we need to see some of these guys emerge in spring camp, and that's BYU's edges unit. And that includes outside linebackers, but also defensive ends. They are the guys in BYU's defense, the preferred style, I should say, that Kalani Sitake has talked about using and what Jay Hill really implemented. They have to bring the heat off of the edge. And BYU had a pretty marvelous season coming off the edge a season ago. In fact, I would say it's the most successful year off the edge in BYU's run under Kalani Sitake. So it's not that it's a unit that's devoid of talent. It's very clear that there's talent there. My question is, which of these guys are going to make that position theirs in spring camp? Now, does that mean that they're going to be the guys come the start of the regular season in September? No, that does not mean that. But there's a big time opportunity in spring camp to kind of pencil your name in atop the depth chart here. And one of the names that I'm not sure will be in the mix is Dusi Taumwe-Apea. If you were looking on social media recently, he posted a picture of him in it looked like a cast or a walking boot, and said he was going to be back soon. Well, I'd be hard pressed to think that if even if he is somewhere near being able to play at this point, that you'd push him in spring camp. So that's a guy that in Nusi that I would not be saying, hey, you need to get out there and prove yourself in training camp, in spring camp. We'll see you in training camp. But there are other guys on this list that I think absolutely have this opportunity in spring camp to show that, okay, what I showed during the 2025 campaign, well, it's very much translatable. I'm only taking it to the next level. There are some holdovers, some veteran guys in this unit. That includes Bodie Schoonover. You also look at Hunter Clegg, even though he's a second-year guy. Some of these bigger-body defensive ends, they need to show that they can hold up against the run, but also add a pass rush element to it. Because Bodie at 6'3", 270, yeah, that's a big body at defensive end, but he is proven to be a guy who can get after the passer if given the opportunity. You also include guys like Tausili Akana. Now, Tausili, coming over from Texas a season ago, well, he was listed at 6'3", 230 or 235 pounds coming in. And that's pretty light for a defensive end. But as the season wore on, Tausili proved to be very effective coming off the edge when given the opportunity in third down situations. What he needs to show is, A, he's able to gain some weight, maybe push it to 240, 245, hopefully get to 250 at some point in his college career, and show that he's more than just a pass rush specialist, because you need to have guys who can play all three downs. And what I see from this defensive end unit is there's a lot of guys on this list. They say, okay, pass rush specialist, maybe a run stopper, pass rush specialist, runs. I just kind of go down the list. I want to see true three-down linemen. And I know that at defensive end, it's a little more mix and match than it is maybe with defensive tackles or linebackers, but what BYU wants is they want the versatility to be able to throw almost anybody on the field at any given time, and that defense doesn't skip a beat. You're not having to sub on third downs to get pressure off the edge, because it can be a giveaway when certain guys come on the field. And that's what you're trying to avoid. You want to have the illusion of, okay, we don't know where the pressure is coming from, but it's going to come from somewhere. And quite frankly, you want your defensive ends. That's one of their job responsibilities, is to get pressure on the opposing quarterback. What a guy like Chad Kauha'a, who's now the defensive ends / outside linebackers coach, he's the edges coach, is what I'm going to call him, at least from my side of things, is that he's got to get guys who, A, can get after the quarterback, but also hold up in run stopping. And I love that the fact that he's got all this talent on this in this room, because you go from Bodie Schoonover to Orion Miley Kafusi, Kinalao Fonohema, like these names are guys who are high-level 3-star, if not 4-star talents at the high school level. Tausili Akana, a 4-star talent. Hunter Clegg, a 4-star talent. Bodie Schoonover was a 4-star talent. Orion Miley Kafusi, 3-star. Kinalao Fonohema, 3-star. Vincent Tautua, 3-star. Siosefa Brown, 3-star. Nusi Tamoepao, bonafide 4-star. Kendall Wall, 3-star. Braxton Lindsay, who just recently joined the program, he was a high 3-star. And then Adney Reed, well, he's kind of a wild card, because Adney's been living down in Australia with his parents serving a mission, being a mission president and companion down there. It was in Australia, it might have been actually in the islands, but the point is, there is a ton of high-level talent in this room. Which 1, 2, or 3, 4 of these guys are going to use this spring as their opportunity to emerge? And I already acknowledged that Nusi Tamoepao, him not being available, that takes one of the true contenders off the list for me. But in the absence of a guy like that, other guys get the opportunity to step up and use those reps to their advantage. I like this unit. I really think it may be, in terms of just on paper, one of the most talent-rich positions in BYU football in their program right now. I've got no problem saying that, because, like I said, you go by recruiting rankings, you'd be hard-pressed to find another unit on BYU's roster that has the resume or the I don't know, the credentials that these guys sport. But that's just it. Those are credentials. Those are resume. You need to see the production on the field. And yes, a bunch of these guys were productive at different points a season ago. Can you refine it to where that production and that high level that you can get to is the consistent nature that you bring every single day to the BYU football program? That is what you need to see. And that's what Chad Kauha'a, also Sione Puha, even though he's mainly dealing with BYU's defensive tackles, they will be efforting to get that out of these guys. And I'm sure that Kelly Papinga is BYU's new defensive coordinator, and even Kalani Sitake himself, they'll be talking to these guys and being very blunt about, hey, we need you guys to be more forceful off the edge. This defense functions best when a 3-man front can get home, and what getting home means is getting after the opposing quarterback. Doesn't always mean you have to sack the quarterback, but causing chaos, causing that quarterback to have happy feet, causing them to misfire. All those things contribute to winning high-level football, and this is a high-level football program right now. Speaking of Kalani Sitake and the BYU Cougars, and they got every intention of continuing the run of success they've had the past 2 years, going 23-4. They'd love to make it. Let's say they go 12-0 this year, and that's maybe a pie in the sky-ish. But think about that. You add 12 more wins to that tally. That means you have gone 35-4 over 3 seasons. That's downright elite. And even if it's 11-1, you get the maths. It's the expectation level for this BYU football program is at an all-time high, and they're right there. They are so close to breaking through and making the college football playoff, and they don't want to slip one bit. And a unit like this, that, like I said, is as talent-rich as it is at defensive end / edge, well, hopefully can live up to the credentials, the star ratings that these guys all had, and that production. Yeah, we see all that talent come to bear, because if it does, you're going to see an elite unit really coming into its own this spring, and more importantly, on into the 2026 football season. And I, for one, I'm here for it. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the show. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic out there. As always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. Coming up tomorrow, we'll get a kind of an early look at West Virginia. I'm hoping to catch up with our good friend Mountaineer Paul for a little crossover edition ahead of BYU and West Virginia playing basketball. We'll see if that comes out tomorrow or Friday, but stay tuned for that. We'll also continue to get ready for BYU spring ball. More burning questions heading into spring camp for the Cougars. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you once again. Get Locked On Cougars ad-free plus members-only Discord Discord service, access, and more. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com. I'm butchering this read here, but for those of you on video, we're now going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. Get more of the Locked On podcast content that you love coming up next. Or if you're on audio, make your second listen of the day Locked On College Basketball with the latest takes from our good friend Isaac Shade and company over there with Locked On College Basketball. And as always, thank you for being an everydayer right here on the podcast, and come back tomorrow and join us on Locked On Cougars.